1. Fragments of Silicon, proudly reminding you that we do have lives outside of online. Wait, no, we don't.
So what you're trying to say is you're Hideki Mori?
Sure.
You don't deserve this giant Toblerone.
Yeah.
I don't even like Toblerone.
Well, anyway, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. Ogre.
This Toblerone is terrible.
Galix.
Hi, I'm here.
Petty Fan.
I have survived another week.
Right, so I guess let's get to the usual news proceedings. Galix, why don't you start us off this week?
I'm really waiting for the weather to start acting like it's fall, which should be as early as tomorrow, which will be nice. Work's going pretty much as normal, not much interesting there. So outside of that, for video gaming, I was trying to play one of the games for review for this week just right now, but apparently something my computer didn't like going on at the same time. So that's off right now. And I've also been playing a bit of Digimon Lynx, since that's out in English at least right now, although I think officially it's only out in Australia. But I got downloaded a Android emulator for my computer, since my phone has a crappy amount of hard drive space. And getting ready for the Splatfest that's this weekend. I'm Team Werewolves because having played both of them in Pathfinder, the sub weakness on vampires really, really sucks. Even though they have a lot more perks. Though I haven't had as much time with that as I want, because unfortunately, with the way my computer is set up in the house, I can't get a very good Wi-Fi signal right by my computer. I use a Ethernet cable for my actual computer, so.
Kind of like me, my bed is basically a Faraday cage almost.
Yeah, in my case, it's more that because of the way the house is built, there are like 2 or 3 exterior walls between my room and where we keep the modem or the router. So I asked about if we could maybe do something about a repeater, but they couldn't find one, or rather, Mom had tried that before, and she couldn't find one that actually she could get to work. So, oh well.
I mean, worst case, they could always just put another router in your room.
Yeah, well, I think that might be something. Anyway, I'm thinking about trying that if I can afford stuff, but I'm also trying to spend a little bit less money than I have been. Anyway, that's about where I'm at.
All right. Twilight?
Well, this past weekend, me and my family went to one of the annual autumn festivals that happens there in October. That was a fairly enjoyable time. I always enjoy seeing all the crafts that people come from around the country and they show off. The only thing I didn't like about it is that they're now selling funnel cakes for $6.
Are they laced with gold?
Yeah, that's the thing about fairs. There's everything. They have cool stuff, but you got to bring like 5 times as much money as you think you need.
Yeah, I've been to
Yeah.
fairs. Like, I don't go to them anymore because, yeah, they're pretty much a ripoff in terms of. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, and now that's over with, the next local festivals will be taking place in my town, and the city's been a little bit chaotic because they've been setting up stuff, and hopefully they don't block it off during one afternoon I'm going home. Um, so as I've been playing the games that we'll be reviewing this weekend, and that'd be about it.
All right, Petty fan.
Yesterday we got new phones.
You've been hyping this up for a while now.
Yeah, we got Samsung Galaxy S8s because they had a good deal. Like we're now only paying
That's the model after the one that randomly explodes.
side variant, but yes. But yeah, so now we don't have crap phones anymore, and we need to get our old ones sent back probably tomorrow because I don't feel like paying $200 per phone. So yeah, it's just been kind of helping everybody get their phone set up the way they want, and been playing video games on the side.
All right.
I guess next.
Anything? All right, Ogre, you're up. It's nice to know that my advice was heeded. Like, no.
So, on that note, Naka and I have started playing Doom for Halloween, the 2016 release, which has been quite enjoying because it's a fun run-and-gun first-person shooter where you just go up to demons, go like, "This is my shotgun." That's you over there now.
Yes.
Let's see. So it's not really hard to get us enthused to play that around. So
No, and it's probably going to be a 1-2 punch if the next game pans out.
let's see. On Friday, I picked up Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga and Bowser's Minions, which I've been having fun with that one.
So how does it compare to the old one?
It's faithful, but there's little bits and pieces here that kind of missed with the upgrade mechanics. So,
And the upgraded art style.
the art style's not that bad, honestly. You kind of get used to it after the 2 games that was with it, so... I mean, it's not as cartoony-ish as you want it to be, but I still think it replicates it as well as it can. I was just talking more like there's in the original game, I think if you did the high jump, just as Luigi was about to jump on top of Mario, if you jumped as Mario, you smash Luigi and his nuts, and a coin popped out of his head. And you actually got a coin, and his hit points would decrease by 1. So it was actually kind of a reliable way to get some money.
And they
just had to
removed
heal
that.
Luigi afterwards. Well, you can't do that anymore because all the actions are pretty much just snap, snap.
Mm.
And there's little other stuff with those actions, but overall it's really enjoyable. I got to the part where I have to start doing the Beanstar search now.
Oh yeah, have fun with that.
Well, I will have fun with that. I just did the whole escort Peach across the desert thing. That's the one part I don't like.
Escort missions. Yeah, more on this in the topic of discussion because we're actually going to be...
Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see. Patty and I are 340 on our tanks.
Woo!
As it turned out, somehow we managed that.
And for
Patty
those of you
got a
playing,
couple lucky draws there, so...
For those of you who are wondering, that's the highest iron level we can be in 14 until the new raid comes out.
Yeah, until the 4.2 update comes out. Which basically means that we don't have to worry about gear unless we want to mix and match.
Yeah,
to
unless
get
we
best
want to go
slots.
Yeah, best in slots really the only thing we're going for now.
But that basically means that we can go through anything and go like, don't need it, don't need it, don't need it, definitely don't need it, don't need it, glamour, don't need it.
Yeah.
So that's been fun. We also been having fun with the new update and everything. I haven't run the new 24-man yet, though from what I've seen of it, I can basically finally concur that Final Fantasy Tactics and all associated games, and Final Fantasy 12 and all associated games, and that one game that has that one protagonist named Ashley that I keep forgetting the name, which I think is Vandal Hearts.
That
Something.
sounds right. Vandal
Something like
story,
that.
Vandal something.
Yeah, it's like Vandal something. All take place in the same world as Final Fantasy 14.
Playable Numo when.
So, yeah, all those games, same world apparently. Though they do that history thing where Dalita is apparently a good king, and from what I know from Final Fantasy Tactics, that's debatable.
At best.
How
Yeah,
good or
at
bad
best.
of a king he was less of an issue than the fact that he kind of got stabbed.
Apparently he lives, so. I mean, I thought he died from that too, but turns out he just lives and goes on to be a pretty alright king or something. So, yeah, if anybody likes any of those games, hey, you got an MMO situated for you. Because we actually go to the Dalmasca Desert, so. Like, it's actually called the Dalmasca Desert.
I'm
But,
curious if they, joking aside, I'm curious if they would add new playable races for that or not.
The bongos, or the bongas,
Uh-huh.
they're there. They actually show up in the opening cutscenes and at the end, from what I've seen. And the big fat pig guys you actually fight partway through, so.
Yeah, they weren't playable until Tactics A2.
Yeah, they're probably not going to be playable, but they're there.
Yeah, no, I just really like the Evilist races, so it would be nice to see them used again.
Yeah, I think they're hinting that the, what was Fran?
Vieira.
Yeah, I think they're hinting that they're going to show up at some point too, so. Again, I haven't actually done the raid or seen much of the other cutscenes, so.
Yeah, and we also have 2 more raids set there.
Yeah.
At some point.
Because we're going to find out the real story of the Tale of the Zodiac Braves, which is basically Final Fantasy Tactics. Go play it.
Yep.
Let's see. Other than that, not really a whole lot going on here, other than it being really cold, and apparently it's going to be really warm this weekend.
I know, right?
Yeah, I got my long pants on. I've got my shorts set aside for when that happens. Fucking weather, man. Anyway, that's it for me.
Alright, guess it's my go. Yeah. My weather has been, well, a bit more consistent. It's colder, but it's not that cold. Like, and it's still humid as fuck most days, so I guess there's something to be said about stability. You know? Just I would prefer the weather to get, colder. So because it's been a very long summer.
Yes.
And outside of that, and not much going on this week, if I'm being honest. Like, it's been slower than normal, mainly because, well, some usual work functions are pretty full up right now. As far as the games go, you'd think we'd have a lot more with 3 games this week, but, well, like, one of the games is pretty short. The other, I only needed to play for an hour before I could, formulate opinions. But then again, I played Roller Coaster Tycoon, and it was a while ago, a very long time ago, but I do remember enough, and I know, management sims and tycoon games. And the third one, that's what I'm working through now. And we're doing a multiplayer session on that on Friday. And yeah, that's about it. Being honest, some weeks are just quiet weeks. Not the worst thing in the universe. Anyway, so merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us is, well, honestly, I've lost count. So, I'm pretty sure it's in the double digits at this point, but, a man who needs no introduction if you've been listening to the show for a while, but, there's probably new people listening, especially given the last week between the code giveaway and, some of our episodes getting higher than normal traffic. Anyway, so it is my grand pleasure to introduce once again John Pickett of MangaGamer.
Hello, it's good to be back here.
Of course, as always. Right, so the game... Thankfully, we can go back to the usual format here of talking about, a centerpiece game and some other games that have been recently released as opposed to the two conferences worth of announcements. Like, that has its own merits, but I'll be honest, there's no chance to really get in depth with anything, when you have like 20 games to get through. Like, and the game we're focusing on is the recently released Space Live Advent of the Net Idols. Gotta admit, I wasn't expecting this to be the game, but I checked and this was the most recent release, at least on Steam.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the most recent release on our website, too.
Right, we'll get to those in its due course, but yeah, so for the uninitiated, what is Space Live?
So Space Live is it's a rather short game that was developed by Circus specifically for the Western audiences. So it's the first Japanese game to be released in English before it's ever been sold in Japan. So it's actually pretty special for the market in that sense, because this is the first time that a Japanese company has sort of specifically gone out of their way to develop a game to release in English in the Western market without also releasing it in their own market, either first or before or alongside. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and might you be privy to the thought processes behind this? Like, why did they pick this game to, launch specifically over here?
I know it's a lot of it is the fact that the Western market for visual novels is growing a lot, and there is actually quite a big market for visual novels here in the West now, and even in Japan, the market is still it's been saturated for almost a decade now. So it's a lot of companies in Japan are struggling to make ends meet when it comes to releasing visual novels in eroge. And like that whole situation was part of why our company was formed and why we started cultivating the Western market. But so this is the case where Circus decided to be one of the ones to take that first step. And they came up with an idea, they pitched it to us, and we did invest a little bit in the development of Space Live ourselves. And now we've seen it brought here to release.
Right, so given the circumstances surrounding the release, did you have, say, more input on the script writing process, like actually making sure the base script is attuned to Western tastes as opposed to a translation effort?
Kind of. It was still a translation effort for us. The Circus did actually write the script in Japanese originally, and we had our staff work on it and translate it and edit it to create a final product. I would say what was different is that we actually got the scripts for this game before it was done development. So we were working on the scripts long before we had any of the artwork, long before any of the CGs were done. So in that sense, there was still time to implement changes if we had suggestions, but it wasn't too different from our usual process.
And how long did you guys work on this particular title?
I want to say translation only took a few months. I want to say around 3, give or take 1.
Makes sense. Yeah, this game isn't especially long. Like, uh,
Yeah.
I think I completed it this morning, and it took me about 5.5 hours.
Yeah. It's a pretty short title, and it's very straightforward. It's what people would consider a kinetic visual novel, which basically means there's no choices that you make in the game at all, and it is purely reading through it.
Yeah, it's basically living up to that novel portion of the visual novel, as it is a novel you are reading with pictures.
Another thing I noticed that kind of diverges a bit from a lot of the visual novels that we've played, at least, is that this is not one of the visual novels where there is a first-person narrator. There are a lot of visual novels with a first-person narrator,
Mm-hmm.
unless that changes further in.
No, Space Life is told in third person. I think at most, if I remember correctly, I think at most there's like 1 or 2 scenes where one of the idols monologues a bit, but that's not for very long.
Right, but it's not like there's a nameless first-person character whose head you're inside for the whole time.
Actually,
Yeah.
there sort of is, or characters. That is to say, there is a romance portion of the competition, and it inserts, like, a nameless, male archetype of that particular scenario in there. That's about as close as it gets.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's not
And that
overarching for
competition
the
is-
whole thing. And
Yeah.
honestly, as someone who's not a huge fan of first-person storytelling, that was kind of nice for me.
Also, with the whole confession competition, that's very much a specific thing where the idols themselves are acting out these scenes as if they're responding to their fans, and the whole idea in that scene is that the fans watching it are supposed to be put in that place of the guy that they are confessing to in the scene.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found that interesting.
It's basically intentionally playing on the trope rather than,
Right.
hey, this is just another visual novel using that same old trope.
Mm-hmm.
To an extent, but it's tying it into the, so for those who don't know, this is an idol visual novel. I don't think we've ever talked about idol culture on the program before. It's actually kind of surprising.
At least not to any great extent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why it's doubly interesting that this title was chosen for the West, given how big idol culture is over in Japan.
It's pretty big with anime fans too, though. When you look at things like Idol Master has made a decent splash over here, Love Live has made a huge splash over here among fans, and well, not too long ago there was like a whole season that was almost nothing but idol animes. So it's still pretty strong within, maybe not necessarily Western gamers as a whole, but within Western anime otaku, it's still pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Makes
And
sense.
it's probably best to keep it there because because the real world idol culture is not the healthiest thing for anyone involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I suppose like one of my main issues with this title was the fact that there is no like voice or singing or anything. I'm like, I suppose that reflects in the budget and everything, but I found it a bit odd that, okay, you're having an idol anime, but you're not going to have any like singing, which is kind of like the main point of idols. Like,
it's definitely one of the big things of idols. I'd say it's not necessarily the whole point, at least if you're talking in the sense of like idol anime, which tend to focus a lot more on the background and the stuff that the idols are doing in between concerts.
true.
And so it still holds true to that.
Yeah,
But
yeah. It's just I'm so used to idols, singing
yeah,
that, and technically they do. It's just it's all text, so
yeah.
it's left up to the imagination. Like,
hmm
but anyway, uh, so was there any problems with Valve on this title, or?
No, no, not at all. There's no the Valve has no problem with this title.
It's hard to tell how prudish they can get at any given moment. Like,
it's I mean it's one of those things that depends on there are certain rules, the line's very thin, but the only thing this game the worst this game that Space Life has is nipple slips during the swimsuit capture the flag competition, and that's basically falls within the realm of the teen rating if you're going by ESRB rules. So Steam has no problem with anything that's rated teen.
right, like, oh, that's good to know. That's good to know that they.
That actually surprises me slightly because it always seems that nipples are much more strictly restricted than that most of the time.
Maybe it's
Then there are.
mature if it's nipples, but it's definitely that's it.
Yeah. No.
I
No.
like,
I'm in no way saying that it's
Yeah.
like an adults-only game or anything. I don't think I've ever seen it in for a movie anything that was really less than on R. I don't think so.
I'm like, I've seen it like in anime and such. Like, granted, this is going a bit old school. Like, Ramna 1/2 comes to mind.
Oh yeah, old anime in
Mhm.
like the 80s and stuff, you could get away with as long as it was for non-sexual purposes, you could get away with topless women
Yeah,
occasionally.
yeah.
Yeah.
These days you don't usually find that in broadcast anime, but that's not just because of different censoring standards. That's also a business reason. Like, a big reason why you're going to get censor streams in the broadcast version of an Ichi anime is they want
They
you
want
to
to sell the Blu-rays.
Yeah. No.
Censor Steam, or even worse, the censor. The top upper right corner of the screen is either solid white or solid black for reasons that make no sense with the lighting in the scene.
So, that's purely business. But yeah, this overall this title was PG-13 at best.
Mhm.
There's a lot of skimpy outfits, some topless nudity, and I guess suggestive situations. Like,
Yeah.
on your interpretation, but definitely lower than some of the other titles you have either published or
Yeah.
be working on.
No, it's Space Life is a rather wholesome game.
Now, inversely, one of the things I really liked was it managed to capture the idle atmosphere very well, even though this is ostensibly in the far-flung future.
hmm
Humanity has abandoned its physical bodies and now is living in a network on the network in one of like 5 kingdoms broken up based on web
Internet
browser
browsers.
companies.
Yeah.
And
The idols themselves are parodies of the browsers as well, and that's one of the big draws for Space Life too.
Yeah, I mean, your main character's IE, and you have Safari and Firefox and
Chrome.
and I think the green girl is Opera.
So Tsukikage is based on a browser that is actually really popular in Japan but hardly known elsewhere. It's called Lunascape.
Makes sense for Tsukikage.
Yeah. And so it's and they actually play a joke on the fact that Lunascape runs, I think it's Gecko software, which is the same thing that Firefox has used, and so they play on that later on in the game, where both Firefox and Tsukikage use something by the name of Gecko, and they're the only two that can use it because it's upon alluding to that reference between the browsers.
Ah, so that was what that was about. Like, yeah, that's one of those things that would probably be missed by a Western audience, if only because they don't know what Lunescape is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of different references and allusions like that to the browsers and their quirks between Sarifa like liking apples, hating Windows, Chrome's cat ears that are just constantly moving and gathering data on everything. Even IE's ribbon is like a design throwback to Internet Explorer. And it's one of those that's one of the big draws in the games, is that just the more you play into it, the more a lot of those little details and references come through. So
Right. And I will say, getting back to the idle atmosphere, it felt like I was almost watching a Nico presentation of an idol special or something like. Almost,
yeah.
But it's like there wasn't characters going across the screen.
No, but
Well,
bringing out that atmosphere was very intentional, because you have the little box there that has the comments like you're watching a stream. That's very much an intentional part of the design. Even like when you're playing the game, if you move the mouse to the top, and the screen comes down, and almost as a reference to the fact that they're browsers, and it has like a little search bar, and one of the icons that you can click, the little star icon like you see in the stream, will let you quick save, and that's a reference to bookmarking a page in a browser.
Right. And I will say they managed to pretty effectively capture the nuance of an audience of this event, in that I completely ignored the chat at all times. Like, that's just from real life experiences.
Old habits die hard.
Yeah. It's like, I will say, from what I did glean, the chat is a lot more ruly and polite than an actual chat would be. That isn't like heavily moderated. It's like,
we say as we have like 4 mods in our chat room right now.
Well, better safe than sorry.
Yep.
Like, anyway, let's see. And as far as like the actual competition the girls go through, how congruent with like an actual idol event would that be? Like,
so a lot of the competitions are things that you might see idols do. Like, obviously the first competition is singing and dancing, the very traditional one. A swimsuit competition, swimsuit photo shoots, those are pretty common to have the idols out in swimsuits as a way to appeal to fans. It's also a throwback to the anime trope for the swimsuit episode. The way that all the idols are so blatant about the nipple slips is not something you would see in an actual idol show.
I think that would be a major scandal.
It'd be a bit of a scandal.
Well, yeah, anything that besmirches everybody's waifus.
Like, with idol culture being what it is, that would be actually kind of ugly.
This is a culture that literally has had actual instances of, there's a rumor that my favorite idol has a boyfriend. I'd better cut up all of my merchandise and set it on fire.
Yeah, granted, that kind of thing happens over here as well with our like singers and our marketed musicians.
The Beliebers.
Boy bands and such. They're not allowed to disclose the fact that they are dating people, to maintain that illusion. But I don't think the Western, like, I never heard of some 14-year-old girl going nuts because, I don't know, a boy band member was dating someone. Like, it's not the case with idols. It's like, Granted, I'm not an
I mean,
expert.
I'm gonna say we still do a lot of like when you think about the way that we follow actors and are constantly poking and prodding into their private lives and wanting to know who they're having sex with. There's still a little bit of that. It's just sort of a different flavor of the same pastry.
Right. Though it's why I don't think you'd see something like the love confession ever happen in real life, because that might just cause a riot.
So the thing with the love confession is it's a bit of a throwback to like in idol culture in Japan, there's the handshake meet and greets, which are very much a staple of that, where it's like people buy the CDs and they get tickets to come and shake hands with the idols and wait in hours in line to be able to, go up to their favorite idol and say a few words and hear a few words and shake her hand. Combined, so it's a bit of that, and it's also combined with the fact that a lot of idols in Japan do get acting gigs, and so being able to act either whether it's on a movie or a variety show, that's still very much a part of being an idol and being in an idol competition.
Makes sense, I suppose. No. I and I suppose how do I talk about the end without spoiling things? Like, I suppose the best way to put it is things take a bit of a left turn, and all of a sudden it becomes a completely different genre.
Yeah, it's.
I know. All of a sudden it becomes a season of Synchno Gear.
I don't
It's
think
a little
that's
bit of
that
a
shocking.
Sentai moment.
I don't think it's that shocking, especially considering that the sort of setup and the motifs have some similarity to Neptunia type stuff beforehand.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so moving forward, let's see. I suppose I should get a status update on how the whole Higurashi release is going.
So we have a lot of the answer arcs are translated, and they still have programming to go before we can release them on Steam. But we're looking at releasing the answer arcs on Steam within the next year. The Ray chapters, I believe we actually have started. As for Umineko, the other franchise from Yukishi, we're actually pretty close to being ready to do something with the answer arcs for Umineko, and we've almost got the net play worked out for the Umineko Fighter Golden Fantasia. So I expect we'll probably be seeing Umineko and its fighting game this year, actually.
Like, gotta admit that's a bit of an odd sell, Umineko in a fighting game.
Yeah, it's so Umineko Golden Fantasia is a fighting game that uses the Umineko characters. If anyone's ever played like Melty Blood or Eternal Fighter Zero, it's that kind of idea where you have a solid fighting game that just uses characters from visual novels. With Umineko, a lot of the supers revolve around activating the meta worlds where the characters sort of imprint their own world upon the stage and gain bonuses and powers and new abilities by activating that.
Right. Yeah, it's like I'm trying to think. There's a fighter like that coming out here soon. Like, I can't remember the name. Well, I hate when that happens. Like, anyway, moving forward, another recent release is Galaxy Girls.
Yes, that's an original English release, released by one of our partners that we retail their games for. That is by Darker Studios, the company, the developers that work on that.
Right, and I think I saw this one on Steam.
Yeah, they retail on Steam as well. but we usually have the adult version on our site, so.
Right, because just looking at some of the screenshots here, yeah, I don't think this would make it to Steam. Not in this form. Yeah, this is very much an explicit title. Like,
Yeah, Darker Studios, I would say, is almost something of an English Nuki studio.
mhm.
So they release a lot of titles that are focused a lot more on that setting up a plot for the sake of having sex.
Like, not the worst thing in the universe, I suppose.
No, it's everyone wants a little bit of that.
I'm like, that is a loaded statement, I'll say, and move forward. Asexuality is a thing that exists in the world.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Like, but anyway, yeah. So, yeah, this is a very this is a Yuri title, like, very Yuri.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so it's the conceit here. What's the setup for all these girls to get together?
I know it's set in space.
Well, I think that gives away. You know, it's called Galaxy Girls.
Yeah.
I hope it's in space. Otherwise,
hey, it could be a metaphor.
For what? Like
spinniness.
Huh.
Or stars. I don't know. Like,
I'm like
metaphor.
Supernovas. Like, I think I get where you're coming from now. Like, yeah, but no, I can definitely tell you it's not metaphorical. At least, you know, they are in space.
Yeah. So it's the setup is basically the girl that you play as wakes up on a spaceship with other women one day, and you're their captain, and you have to complete the mission that's forced upon you. And that's the setup.
Right. Now, it looks like this is quite the meaty package. If I'm reading like the deluxe edition, it has 5 DLCs planned and Daikamura images and soundtrack. All papers. Like, can you speak to what like DLC is being planned here?
No, I can't.
Shame. And I suppose another question at a bit of a more base level is, like, I don't know if you've actually ever worked on like one of these Western visual novels, but you know, outside of like the obvious, is there any like profound differences between working on one of these versus one of the Japanese visual novels?
I'd say it's a lot of the differences, if any, tend to revolve around the fact that you're working with a game that's still in development rather than one that's been released already. So, like, we've been working a lot with Studio Lupesoft lately as we get ready for their release of Mutiny, which is coming out on our website and Steam on the 20th of this month. And so we're able to do a lot of beta testing for them and give them feedback, and they still have some time to implement the changes or rework the script a little bit based on the suggestions and feedback we can give for them. Whereas for a Japanese game, there's no way that script is going to change.
Right.
And it's also it's another one of those things where it's like a lot of times people will already have some idea of what the Japanese game is since it's been released already, and there's usually a select few that have played it and posted screenshots or something of it from the Japanese version. Whereas, again, with the English releases, they've not been released or available to the public at all yet. And so it's a lot of that first release marketing that you have to do to try and get people to know what the game is, what it's about, It's couple of different little challenges like that.
Like, I guess you couldn't say which one was more challenging than the other, could you?
Between the Japanese and the Western.
Right. I imagine like the Japanese version would be harder just because of the language barrier and all that.
Well, yeah. So when we're releasing a Japanese game, obviously we have to actually localize that. And with the Western game, usually that's not an issue. Usually it's being written in English, and they have their own team of writers and editors. And if we do anything in that development process, it's usually feedback through testing. But on the other hand, a large portion of our company is, developed and structured around being able to localize the Japanese games, since that's the core of what we release. So it's not really not too challenging for us to actually localize a game, if that makes any sense.
I suppose it does. And another thing that's I've been wondering about for a while, do like your Japanese partner ever look at like these Western visual novels?
I haven't heard anything of the Japanese companies looking at Western visual novels. A couple of times you'll hear, like, they'll look at like the sales or the popularity of something that's been released in the West. Like, I think the ones that have sort of made a big enough hit to cause a stir with Japanese fans, those are the ones Japanese companies are more likely to be aware of, because then it gets posted and talked about in Japanese news a little bit. But for the most part, they don't follow a lot of Western games. And I don't think a lot of Western developers follow too many Japanese developers either. I'm sure they probably have like their one or two personal favorites, but aside from that.
Right, and so finally, for this session, what are you personally working on? Still the same game we've talked about a couple times now?
Yeah, I'm still personally working on MangaGamer, so, and I'll probably be working on that until early next year.
Like, I still can't get over that title. Like,
recently I've been translating lots of scenes about the crucifixion of Christ and scenes that quote Bible verses while punching people's faces in.
I'm like,
Okay then.
That's a hell of a thing to put on your job description.
Welcome to Japan, everybody.
Like,
it's plot relevant. It's plot relevant. I swear to God, it's honestly plot relevant.
Like, that's good to know. Like, not that I don't think anyone here particularly cares. Like, but yeah, that is the kind of thing that you will see in Japanese products, because, well, cultural appropriation is actually kind of a universal trait. Like,
yeah, it's not like we haven't appropriated Japanese culture and to make movies. Last Samurai.
Right. Right. I mean, that's a whole, debate in of itself. But
yeah,
and like we're not the only ones who do that kind of thing. Like, cultures all over the world do that.
Oh, absolutely. All artists tend to steal from other artists a little bit in that sense for inspiration or ideas, or.
It's just like people in America might not know this because our media is so dominant that unless you are into a thing like anime or something like that, you're really not going to see American culture through another filter. It's actually kind of fascinating. Anyway, so I suppose, given the time of year, you have no more conventions scheduled.
The only convention we have is Anime New York, and that's in the middle of November. And that'll be our last convention for the year.
And what are you gearing up to showcase at that event?
So hopefully we'll have more news about the Umineko franchise by then. We're also gearing up to, like I said, we have Mutiny coming out for release on the 20th of this month. Naked Butlers is releasing at the end of this month on the 27th. That's a game for our BL fans who like butlers and sexy, handsome men. We're also probably looking at releasing the second chapter of Kuroino this fall. And by winter, we're probably going to have something with Imoto Paradise 2 and probably Sorcery Jokers and one of the gameplay titles we announced recently.
That sounds like a pretty full slate coming up, which makes sense. This, it's holiday season, so everyone's releasing stuff. It's like, seriously, there are too many games to play. As it is every holiday season, without fail. Even like here in October, there are too many games to play. But anyway, speaking of which, I'd like to do the traditional extension of invitation to have you back in December. Talk about things, some of the titles that are coming out then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will you be available December 20th?
20th, yes.
Okay, I'll mark you down there. And John, once again, it was wonderful having you on the program. Looking forward to seeing what comes out in the next few months. And
it's always good to be here, and thank you for having me back. And again, anyone can visit our website to check out the games we've talked about. Just follow us online. Our Twitter is @MangaGamer, and we post news all the time.
All right. Penny Fan, play us to the next segment. All right. So welcome to the topic of discussion. As mentioned last week, we are talking about Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Specifically, Superstar Saga because, well, the remake came out a couple days ago. Ogre, why don't you lead us in this discussion?
Well, Superstar Saga came out in 2003, so November of 2003, and was kind of a different take on the Mario RPG style. Like, Paper Mario had already been out for, about 3 years by then?
Something like that.
Yeah, I believe it was 3 years. And I think Thousand Year Door came out around that same time, too. So, after some mild success with their tomato adventure game, Alpha Dream apparently got the chance to take that system and make a Mario RPG out of it, and this time it was the Mario Brothers who were your party members. Which was quite something, considering that up to this point, every time it's just been Mario and Luigi's just been off to the sideline. This is kind of that weird moment where Luigi was starting to come back into the limelight a little.
So another important thing about Alpha Dream is they're staffed by former Square Enix or Squaresoft employees.
Yes, some of them did work on Super Mario RPG.
Right. So Mario and Luigi is actually seen as more of like the proper sequels to Super Mario RPG because of that lineage than Paper Mario. Although that actually isn't true. Mario and Luigi is its own thing, even if it does borrow from the overall gestalt of Mario RPG tropes. It has the timed hits and so on and so forth.
So the basic story is that some representatives from a new kingdom called the Bean Bean Kingdom show up and steal Princess Peach's voice. Turns out they're actually bad guys in disguise. Apparently that's the one thing Bowser just keeps missing. Put on a mask and they can't see you coming.
Yep.
It's honestly
which does happen partway through, so. But and then the Mario Brothers have to go to the Bean Bean Kingdom to go stop that nefarious plan, and I gotta say, this is one of those weird RPGs that kind of subverts but then plays everything straight partway through.
It's very winky about RPG tropes in general.
Yeah, it pretty much is. But
and you have to deal with such nefarious threats as overeager border patrol, criminal exchange rates, annoying princes with very shiny hair,
and the occasional villain who's trying to take over the world.
Well, yeah, of course.
You know, those things everyone's used to. It's actually really that's the basic story at the beginning. It kind of gets weirder halfway through. It's actually pretty early on that it kind of goes off the rails a bit. But yeah, it's definitely a fun game. It's definitely one of the better Game Boy Advance games out there.
I mean, there's a reason why they sort of followed this and made it into its own sub-franchise.
Yeah. That's why there was, like, what, 5 other Mario and Luigi games?
I think so.
Yeah. Partners in Time, Inside Story, Dream Team, and Paper Jam. So just 4 others. 5 in total.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's just that if you've ever played Super Mario RPG and want some more stuff like that, this will definitely scratch that proverbial itch there. Definitely more RPG-ish than what Paper Mario was and currently is.
Especially currently is.
Yeah, well, especially currently, but let's face it, the Mario and Luigi games are very much the min-maxi stat kind of thing.
Well, it's because of Mario and Luigi that partially that Paper Mario took the turn that it did. You know?
Yeah, they decided to split their Mario RPG conceptual space so that you didn't have 2 different sub-franchises competing.
It's like they decided that Mario and Luigi was going to be, it's the RPG classic series, and Paper Mario is now the ill-defined, shitty action-adventure thing.
With papercraft gimmicks.
Yes. But, as far as Superstar Saga goes, like, the big differentiator between that and the other Mario RPGs was the fact that you took control of both of the brothers.
With one button designed for them.
Yes.
Yeah, in the Game Boy Advance version, this was very clear that the A button is always Mario stuff and the B button is always Luigi stuff.
Not necessarily. If you switch them around, who's ever in front is the A button.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what it was originally.
I had forgotten that. Sorry.
I remember it quite clearly because I always had fun just having Luigi in front, just going like, "Yeah, take that, Mario."
And there are different combination moves that you can use with the 2 brothers, and
yeah, the brother moves.
Which one is in front affects how they work.
Right. And it's not just like combats. This game really doubles down on like environmental puzzles, and abilities. Yeah, and the brothers get different abilities at different times. Like, Mario gets the spring jump, I think, and Luigi gets the tornado jump, something like that.
It's vice versa. Luigi gets the spring jump and Mario gets the spin jump.
There we go. Like, it's been a long time since I played the original Superstar Saga.
Which is fun, is because those field moves actually translate into combat moves partway through. Mm-hmm. So once you get one, You tend to get the bro move in the actual battle too. So what was high jump on the field is now, it's not Splash Brothers, it's something else. That's the one that Mario gets.
I suppose one of my favorite understated parts of Superstar Saga is the good guys are surprisingly competent.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's like they're more competent than they usually are in one of these things.
Again, that was my point, is that the fact that this game kind of subverts a lot of storytelling tropes, but at the same time ends up playing them straight.
Right. Well, that's more due to unforeseen circumstances than you know, the world's shittiest security system. You know,
Yeah.
It's a far cry from what's going on here in, you know, like say New Super Mario Bros. Wii, where you know the airship literally reaches into the castle and kidnaps the princess. Like, you know, there's a reason why this has become such a long-running joke.
Yeah.
In fact, as you mentioned, you know, the Super Mario or Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga plays with this further with that desert level.
Mm-hmm.
That godforsaken desert level.
Yeah, the escort mission that actually has Peach get kidnapped at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
To kind of show you how to deal with that.
Yeah, and you have to keep an eye on her, because if she like wanders off, she instantly gets captured.
If she goes off screen, she's instantly kidnapped.
Yeah, it's like, is this your fucking ability? Like, you know, undoubtedly the worst part of the game. Like,
yeah, I made it a lot easier because I just went ahead and beat all the enemies in the area, and then just had to deal with the puzzles. Turns out it's easier to do an escort mission when you got nobody gunning for the princess.
Oh yeah, I did that too. Also of note, this game featured a cameo of Gino.
Yeah, this was actually the first time since Square Enix split with Nintendo that they actually had some kind of showing of healing that gap there.
It's in one of the slot machine type thingies.
Yeah, there's a game you can play in one of the villages later on that has him be the instruction. Unfortunately, not in the remake, but I kind of think that deals with royalties and whatnot.
Yeah, because wasn't there a credit to Square Enix in the actual credits, and I don't think they renewed that.
Explicit credit at the very end that says, despite all the above, Gino is owned by Square Enix.
Well, that's kind of how some of these collaborations work. You know, obviously Nintendo would own all the, you know, previously created stuff, but all the original stuff that Square Enix or Squaresoft at the time created would be theirs.
Kind of like with Kingdom Hearts, Square owns Sora, Riku, and them, but they obviously don't own the Disney stuff.
No, and in fact, Disney actually owns the franchise. Like, they own like the Kingdom Hearts IP. It's you know, collaborations are all often complicated affairs for this very reason. You know, sometimes it's a work for hire. Sometimes, you know, yeah, you might have elements that are owned by another company, which one reason why it's been so hard to get a proper sequel of Super Mario RPG.
Yeah.
No, remember, that was created 1995, 1996. It was actually like the last game Nintendo and Square worked on before the Great Split.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they wouldn't get back together until, you know, about 2002, 2003. Like, and in the meantime, well, they still wanted to do Mario RPGs, so they created their own branches.
And honestly, the isometric viewpoint and pre-rendered sprites wouldn't have it aged as well as they could have anyway, so...
But we've reflected upon Super Mario RPG in a different retrospective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I suppose this once again goes to Ogre. How does the remake fare against the original? I know you touched upon it in the news, but this is kind of where we can go in depth in the subject.
I gotta say, it holds up very well. It's a nice updated style. If you played the original, you might like it a little more with the cartoony style from it. But I think with the past two additions to the series, Dream Team and Paper Jam, it holds up rather well. There are some little things here and there, like before you get the field bro moves, and you can actually have little interactions between that. My favorite one is when you got the hand powers and try to use it on the other brother, and they get mad at the other one.
Because Mario gets a fire hand, and Luigi gets an electric hand. And if I recall correctly, Mario's involved setting Luigi on fire, so he runs really fast. And I forget what Luigi's electricity does to Mario.
It paralyzes them so that they can move in a single line, in the direction they're going.
It's the strafing power up.
Yeah. But he had like little things like that to where you go like you light Luigi on fire and you get mad at Mario, and Luigi would zap Mario and he'd get mad. You could do the same thing with the hammers and that kind of stuff. You can't do that with the way they've made the system this time around, to where it's just whenever you select the power, that's who's using it. So once you get the hammer, Luigi can't use the hammer. It's only Mario up until you get that bro move. So it feels a little iffy there, but that's kind of more or less the small thing. Everything else kind of holds up pretty well. They actually added in Dr. Toadley from Bowser's Inside Story into the story now. He's the one that hypnotizes you at the little fungi town.
Huh. Who was that in the original?
It was a Psycho Kamek.
Ah.
It was like a Kamek, but in white mage-looking clothes, so...
That makes sense.
Though I kind of like it as Dr. Toadley this time around. Because he was always a good character inside Story. Like, he just kind of felt underutilized because that's like the only game he was ever in. But yeah, no, I gotta say, if you like the original or never got a chance for the original, which you can either find a GBA cartridge cheap or whatever, or you can get it on the Wii U. If you can't, then you got a 3DS, you can pick up this one and you get a little extra game out of it with Bowser's Minions.
Yeah, so how is the Bowser's Minions mode?
I played a bit of that, and I gotta say it feels like Fire Emblem Light, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
How far do you have to go before you can do that?
You have to... How far was it? I think you have to get down the mountain first. It's like once you start making your way to the Bean Castle, then it will open up automatically. The game will tell you that there's another little adventure you can take care of.
Mm-hmm. And the amiibo functions are mostly only in that part of the game?
I believe they're only in that. Well, no, there's some guy in town who says something about stamps from the amiibos, but since I don't have amiibos, I don't know how exactly that works.
Yeah, I don't know what they do. You can get tourist stamps and get something for them, but I don't know what. And I think in the other mode, the amiibos let you, in Bowser's Minions mode, the amiibos, at least the Koopa Troopa and Goomba ones that came out with it, and the old Boo one that was from the Mario Party or Mario Tennis game, let you summon a special version of that monster for your party.
Right, and
I have to take your word for that because I don't know. So,
well, I got the Koopa Troopa one, and that's what it said on the back.
All right, works for me.
And I suppose another posing question here is Mario Brothers in the remake?
Sadly, no, it isn't. I was kind of bummed about that one.
0 out of 10.
Because that was what was originally the second game for that one, was they just put in Mario Brothers. So you could play that when you were done, which turns out that's actually a really fun game. Who knew? This Mario guy's got a career ahead of him. Not in plumbing, though, but he's got a career somewhere. So, yeah, but honestly, it's a hoot. If you ever like the humor in the Paper Mario series, this one gives it a run for its money sometimes.
Especially, I mean, if you know who Fawful is, this is the game he came from.
Yes, if you ever heard
This is
somebody
the
say
first I
Mustard
have.
of Doom.
Lots of, and well, that's kind of the whole gimmick of the Bean Kingdom, is that everything is based on
Laughter.
jokes and laughter.
Yeah. That's why when you go up to the far north, that's the, the no joke place?
Mm-hmm.
That it's all ice cold because that's where just the jokes just don't fly over there. There's an actual pun. There's actual meaning for that. Well, like things just go cold.
Yeah, cold gag or whatever, where it's like
it's just basically
it's so terrible joke. I think it's used a lot for like dad joke style things.
Yeah, it's just where the jokes go bad. It's actually called Joke's End. So yeah, just basically where all the bad jokes go to die.
Speaking on such things, this is also the game that gave us Fawful.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who he is, well, he's the sidekick villain character who became immensely popular with the way his speech was translated.
And then he comes back. He's a shopkeeper in a bonus area in Partners in Time, I think, and then in Inside Story he was something.
He was Inside Story. He was the main bad guy.
Okay, I thought so, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, but he became a mimetic mutation, such as it was in the early 2000s. With lines like "I have fury" and like what was it, like the mustard of my victory or something like that.
Mustard of doom.
Yeah, it's a combination of just sort of generally questionable English and then really, really elaborate mixed metaphors about how he's going to beat you. Or how he's pissed off that he's failed to beat you.
Right. Yeah. Any final thoughts on Superstar Saga?
I love it. I gotta be honest. I like all the Mario and Luigi games, but I think I'm with like the majority here, where they kind of say like the first one is still the best one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's not the majority opinion I've heard. Consensus is Bowser's Inside Story. I've not played that one. I'm like, I kind of stopped after Partners in Time was resoundingly mediocre.
Yeah, I know there's a consensus opinion that Partners in Time is like the least good, or at least of the first three.
Yeah, I would say it's like the weakest, but considering the crowd it's in, that's kind of like saying it's the one that can't lift up the 20-ton boulder, but can only lift up the 10-ton one.
Yeah, it's not actually bad. It just doesn't stand out as well as the other ones do. Bowser's Inside Story certainly has an interesting angle to it.
It does.
I would personally say I like Superstar Saga better than Inside Story, but that's because I kind of just really don't care how Inside Story kind of just sticks the brothers into just straightforward platforming kind of segments instead of letting them always be in the top-down overworld kind of thing.
That's true. There's a lot more of that in that game.
Yeah.
Who dropped? Oh, it was just John.
Yeah, but yeah, I think the consensus is, from what I've heard, is that Superstar is pretty much the best one of the bunch, though Inside Story being a top contender doesn't surprise me that much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say if you get the it's funny too, because when the game first originally came out, I was like, but I already have Paper Mario, so I'm just gonna get Fire Emblem. And I did, and I liked that one, and then Naka got Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, and I was like, oh, so that's what that is. I may have to look into that. And I didn't look back.
Yeah. I'm like, So if you did do a Let's Play of this game, would you do the original or the remake?
I usually tend to stick with remakes. If something comes out that can be considered the definitive version of it, I like to stick with those.
Now are all the hidden beans in the same places?
I believe so. I know they changed it to where like the invisible beams can actually be seen, so you're not looking forever for those.
I guess that's something.
Yeah, but yeah, this would probably be the one to do it. I don't know. That might be a discussion.
I'm sure you-
like I said, I usually stick with the quote unquote definitive version if I can. Though I do like how some people kind of seem to interpret that I got the game. They go like, oh, "Does this mean what it think it means?" And I kind of went like, "No, it doesn't. I just picked up the game."
I'm like,
Oh, I also when I also picked it up, I picked up a copy for my nephew because it was his birthday Sunday. So hey, you like Paper Jam, so I got him that one too.
it's also don't expect an RPG from these guys until next year.
See, that's the other thing. It's kind of like Chrono Trigger, where it's not really that long of an RPG. Like if you just kind of go along with it, you could be done with it in a weekend.
Yeah, unless you're trying to grind to get everything completed and get all the different coffee things and
I know. It's just, all these months later and you're still exhausted from Color Splash.
I'm over that by now, but
Well, that's good.
but yeah, no, it's definitely it's a nice game. It's short, but that's mostly because it was a portable game. So they kind of have to make those short. But yeah, I would honestly recommend it if you can. If you like Mario and you like RPGs, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, it's probably my second favorite RPG of the Mario series that I've played. First is still Thousand Year Door. I'm one of those people who doesn't hold Super Mario RPG in that high of a regard. It's like, but that's
it did a lot of cool stuff, but there are some things that haven't aged well, and the pacing is off in a few places, certainly.
It's also a lot more straight-laced. Like you can tell Square was at the helm here versus Nintendo, because honestly, Super Mario RPG kind of lacks personality compared to Paper Mario or Mario and Luigi. Whether or not that was limitations of the Super NES or other factors is up to date. Anyway, so I think that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to tune in about a half an hour, 40 minutes my time for MSP and on that program.
We are having Chris Moore, aka Rowdy C.
All right, and the week ahead, as far as this program is concerned, Sunday reviews. We've got 3. We've got Space Live here, we got Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic, and we got Mushroom Wars 2. And next week, we do have a Tuesday show, so I'll remind you the usual fashion. On October 17th, we're having Tej Marshall of Sushi. We'll be talking about Fear Effect Sedna and Fear Effect Reimagined. And on Wednesday, October 18th, we'll be having Zach Johnson and Kevin Simmons of Asymmetric Publications. The makers of Kingdom of Loathing and West of Loathing. You might notice we were supposed to have this interview about a month ago. Yeah, this is the interview that got canceled because of the hurricane. Better late than never. Even though West of Loathing is definitely less fresh into my mind than it was a month ago. Such is life. And yeah, that's our programming for the week ahead. Looking forward to seeing you MSP side. Until then, I wish you good gaming.
Alright.